Hey, everybody. Welcome to our 2024 Virtual Coffee Lightning Talks. We're your hosts, Meg and Becca, and we're excited to be here with you today. We're going to take a minute to tell you about the virtual coffee community while people are tuning in and getting settled. But first, hi, Mom.
Virtual Coffee started as a once a week Zoom chat and then progressed pretty quickly to twice a week. There was at one point where I was doing double sessions on Thursdays or Fridays, and it was a little bit much, but we grew into a community that supported developers and people who are in tech or who are interested in being at tech. So everyone at all stages of their journey. And we started meeting and mentoring, hosting events, but most importantly, we were here making friends. Our mission has been to be a welcoming tech community that allows room for growth and mentorship at all levels and to create meaningful opportunities for learning, leadership, and contribution for everyone. You can always find out more about us and find out, you can look at our code of conduct, learn more at our website at virtualcoffee.io.
That's right. Also, don't forget to check it out. If you like what you see, join us at virtualcoffee.io/join. Also,
And you can like and subscribe. Hit that smash button. That's not it. Smash that subscribe button. What do the kids say these days?
What do they say? I don't know.
They no smash idea. Something. And it has
smash
to
all the buttons.
Not do with people. There's a button involved.
So this month we're wrapping up our Find Your Voice monthly challenge, and that's all about public speaking. In May, we're going to focus on one of my favorite monthly challenges. It's community kindness. This challenge encourages our members to celebrate one of the things that makes virtual coffee really, really special, and that's kindness. This is seriously one of the most special places I found on the internet, and it's just because all of the members are so kind. So we're really glad to have you all here with us today. And I want to thank all the speakers that you are going to see in the following few hours, and thank them just for embracing this monthly challenge and signing up to give a talk, putting themselves out there. Without you, this whole event wouldn't be possible.
And Lightning Talks have a really special place in my heart. We've been doing this since I think the first one that we did was in November of 2020, and it's been an annual thing. Yeah, November. It's been an annual thing. They're meant to be an introduction to a topic and a great opportunity for our members to share the things that they're interested in or they've learned about or they're experts in. And here at Virtual Coffee, we treat them as a way to ease into public speaking or to gauge interest for a possible lunch and learn topic. So if you're out there, you're giving a talk today and you're like, hey, I want to go a little bit further, definitely fill out that lunch and learn form. But today, we're not going to be taking questions as part of the event. You can drop them in the chat and we'll tag the speakers and their topics in the VC events channel in Slack directly after their talk. So if you have questions or comments, feel free to add them there. And also, we always love to share the love at Virtual Coffee, as Meg said. Next month, we're doing community kindness, which is like a celebration of Virtual Coffee going into the next year. And we definitely want to encourage the usage of live stream chat too, especially when speakers ask the audience questions. So definitely look out for that. Feel free to encourage all of our participants, and thank you all for being here today.
Yeah. So Becca, are you ready to kick us off?
I think so, Meg. I'm very excited for this.
Oh, I am too. I'm super excited for this first talk that's coming up.
And it's me. So thank you all again for being here. I am super excited to be kicking us off for our lightning talks and hoping that this works. But I want to start us off by going back to April of 2020. This was the early days of the pandemic when the world started to feel like it was closing in around us. The pandemic had left us feeling isolated, uncertain, and craving connection. It was in this time that something beautiful was born, and that was virtual coffee. I put out one simple tweet: was anyone interested in virtual coffee? And what started as one coffee turned into finding hope together in the place where we could safely gather online. Virtual coffee was built out of necessity, but it's grown since then through compassion and shared experiences. I, who knew that virtual coffee would still be here? Because I didn't imagine that we would still be doing virtual coffee today. It began as a necessity, a simple solution to a very real problem: isolation. But what surprised me the most was the reasons that people kept coming back. It wasn't exactly about the virtual coffee chats, although those were important, but it was about the people that were coming. It was about the vulnerability, the shared laughter, and the tears and the feelings of belonging. So many of us didn't laugh during that period. We were able to laugh again when we came together. We witnessed life's triumphs and tragedies together: marriages, babies, job losses, heartbreaks. Each of our stories has been woven into the fabric of our community. It's made it stronger, it's made us more resilient together, and it has made us enduring. So, why are we still here? Well, I think that comes down to what makes virtual coffee special, the reason why people came back. As we go into the 5th year of virtual coffee, I think it's really important to reflect on what's made this community so special and to think about how we can bring that to the future of our community. Over the years, our community has witnessed and supported each other through the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. I remember one of the first messages I received in the first couple of months of virtual coffee. One of our members was having a miscarriage, and they asked me and Kieran, what should I do in this moment? And we experienced that loss with them. But since then, we've also experienced the joy that we've seen from that. We've seen new babies come from that situation. And we've seen struggles and triumphs that make up everyday life. And these shared experiences haven't only connected us, they've woven us together in a fabric that is resilient and enduring. There are a lot of online communities that are out there, but virtual coffee we're different. What truly sets us apart is the way that we interact with each other. This is important. We show up not just to take, but to give. We offer support during the tough times. Together, I've seen us celebrate each other's successes, build genuine connections. Our community is not transactional, and that's so important. We're relational. We build deep and lasting bonds over time. This commitment to building, I lost all of my screen. Sorry. This commitment to building real connections is what I like to call the virtual coffee effect. It's about creating ripples of impact that extend far beyond our online interactions. And for me, one of the most important things about virtual coffee is to have a lasting impact on not only our community, but to create ripples that extend far beyond who virtual coffee is. Now, there are different types of communities, and our community has always sought to be an intimate tech community for all, optimized for you. And we're doing something really special here, and it comes down to the approach of virtual coffee. Early on, one of our members described it as thinking of it like we're sitting around a coffee table with our friends. What kind of conversations do you have sitting around those coffee tables? Well, what comes to mind is the intimacy that we think of as important at Virtual Coffee. The intimacy that allows for vulnerability, honesty, growth, mentorship, where every meeting is a chance to strengthen our connections and to ensure that everyone feels like they're a part of our group. And early on at Virtual Coffee, I started to take notes about what I thought was special about our community. And it's really hard to boil it down to a couple of things, but for me, we have this like framework that rests on two pillars, which is the person-centered approach. That means that everyone is valued, participation styles differ, and that's totally okay. We want all voices to have a safe space to be heard because that's what we deserve. We encourage growth, we respect each other's journeys. The second part of that pillar is effective tools and structure. Okay, so this might seem very different, but it's not. It's really important because when we provide the right tools and clear processes, we facilitate communication and interaction that respect both the individual needs and community goals. And this helps us to alleviate the challenges faced by anyone who's supporting Virtual Coffee and our members. Our goal is to increase authentic connection with community support. And you can see this in the growth of our community. We added a Slack. We didn't have a Slack at the beginning. I was very resistant to it. Brian Healy came to me and he was like, hey, do you think we should have a Slack? I'm like, I don't know if we need that because I think that we're probably only going to do this for the next 3 months while the pandemic is happening. We've grown together, obviously. And from there, we added lunch and learns. We have a co-working room, and we have more. All of these things have come as a result of understanding our community, forming those bonds with them, and recognizing the needs for connection. When we see people get their questions answered, when we see members connect each other to jobs, when support is given in the heavy channel, when someone says, hey, want to jump in the co-working room to talk about it, we see the results of these two pillars in action. We give candid feedback to each other. We push each other to grow. A sense of belonging permeates our space, evident in shared sayings and organic mentorship. And we have overheard quotes, I think is the channel that we have in our Slack space. But these are the things that are formed out of relationships. It's not a quote that we saw on the internet. It's a quote that we heard in the co-working room or in Virtual Coffee or when we meet each other one-on-one. This is about us learning about each other and growing together. When Virtual Coffee is at its best, there is a sense of belonging. It's a great feeling when I hear members say, we do this at Virtual Coffee. We see horizontal mentoring happen. We see trust being formed. And that's so important because this is what a healthy community looks like. It's diversity in people, ideas, and backgrounds. It allows for disagreements. It allows for not having the same approach. It embraces people who I don't know, my slides are dying here. So I'm sorry. It allows for not having the same approach. Again, it embraces people who are willing to lead conversations and those who are willing to find the right tools and have the hard conversations and to understand what the needs are of all of the voices that we support at Virtual Coffee. Sure, there is tension sometimes. Disagreements certainly arise, and not everyone clicks together, but this is important to our growth and our community. Healthy communities embrace diverse perspectives. We allow for respectful debate. That's okay. We value every voice, every story, and the unique contributions each member brings. There's room at our table for different voices, and we value every person who shows up. Starting a pandemic community actually was some ways kind of easy. I didn't mean to start the community. It just started and then I kind of went with it. So I always say this was an accidental community and here we are going into our 5th year. We didn't have anywhere safe to go except online. We were united by trauma, which is a powerful force, right? We faced our challenges together, but today's landscape right now is a little bit different. We're kind of in this post-pandemic era. There are still fears and there are still frustrations, but there's still a sense of isolation. And one of the things that happened during the pandemic is we were all able to come together in our feelings of isolation because we all felt it. We're not all feeling it right now. We're no longer living that shared experience. And sometimes now our online and our offline worlds seem really disparate. I've noticed a change over the last year or two in the tech industry. We went from having hope because there was like a huge boom in salaries and jobs and growth, expanding teams. And now we're kind of in this phase of layoffs, of decreased salaries, a lot of burnout. It felt like we thought what was stable isn't anymore. And in these times, I know it's tempting to retreat, and I know it's hard to believe that growth is possible. But Virtual Coffee's early days offered a very powerful lesson. Trauma can be reframed through meaning making. This is the act of sharing stories and finding purpose in challenging experiences. And research by Crystal Park from UConn underscores this. We don't just adjust to our thinking about bad things. We sometimes redefine our core beliefs to fit our new reality. I've seen so many of our members rewrite their stories over the years. Members who were burnout at work started leading discussions about work-life balance. Others left bad jobs and became mentors, showing others how to build healthy teams. Members who struggled to find jobs, they offered hope and support, and they offered a new path and guidance for new grads. At Virtual Coffee, we never expect experts. We expect human beings who are willing to give it a try. At Virtual Coffee, these changes happen through conversations and sharing stories. We listened to each other and people's perspectives shifted. It wasn't about feeling better. It was about finding new paths that made sense for our lives right now. Research shows us that having a community is key to getting through tough times. And that's exactly what Virtual Coffee provides. We support each other. We share our stories of how we're coping. We brainstorm solutions together. We understand ourselves and the world around us in new ways. It's like a safety net that helps us to make sense of what's happening. And here's the thing. Life is going to throw us all curveballs. How we respond shapes who we become. At Virtual Coffee, we believe in growth, sharing stories, supporting each other. This allows us to rewrite our stories. It allows us to come out stronger. As we move forward, our goals remain very clear. We want to deepen authentic connections, to ensure that every person who joins feels welcomed, valued, and supported. The ultimate measure of our success is not in numbers. It's in the positive impacts that we have on each other's lives. We want to create ripples that extend far beyond the immediate boundaries of our community. We need to continue to be a community that shows up, steps up, and grows together. After I was laid off, one of the times, I reached out to someone who came to the early days of Virtual Coffee. I was feeling like pretty angry, sad, alone, lost, all of the things, right? Like all of the things that make you feel down. And what he said to me was what I needed to hear exactly. Becca, self-evaluate. What are your strengths, weaknesses, and where do you want to go next? He also met me with empathy, but with a challenge to change my mindset and to grow in that experience. And so moving forward, I want to say that our mission remains clear. We want to deepen connections, ensure that everyone feels valued. Our success at Virtual Coffee has never been measured in numbers. It's been measured in the positive impact that we have on each other's lives. We want to create ripples that extend far beyond our community. So this is my challenge to you. Let's be the community that shows up. That's the Virtual Coffee effect.
Wow, that was Awesome, Becca. Way to kick us off.
Thanks, Meg. I didn't get through all my slides. They were supposed to progress on their own and they were not. So I think I only had a couple more, but I just want to say thank you to everyone. I was sharing a lot of the kindness and support that we've received over the years. And I think that it's important to share that with all of our members.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to highlight one line you said. At Virtual Coffee, we never expect experts. We expect human beings who are willing to try. I think that very much captures the spirit. And yeah, that's really great. So thank you so much, Becca. And
Thanks,
on the
Meg.
heels of that, we are going to bring in a longtime member, Yearn, who is going to come and show us about this technology, WebRTC. I'm really excited to hear about that. Yearn, you have a certificate on the wall behind you. Is that like a college degree or something, or?
Yeah, these three things are actually from elementary school, and they tell that I can multiply the numbers from 1 to 10 very good. So yeah, you can ask me about that later.
Nice. Very, very prestigious. I'm glad you have those up for everyone to see. Great. Well, I think what you're about to show us is a little more complicated than elementary multiplication.
Let's see.
All right. Take it away, Aaron.
Okay, thanks. And thanks for the great intro talk, Becca. So, hi, I'm Jörn. I was born in the 80s. And when I was little, I didn't want to become a policeman, fireman, or firefighter, or astronaut. I wanted to be a video game tester. And soon after that, I realized it would be even better to be a video game programmer so I can create my own games and then test them the whole day. In the end, I became a web application developer. So that sounds a lot more boring. But in the end, I can still entertain users, and I really like to do that with a great user experience. So let me show you what I mean by that by showing you my story. In the late 90s, when I was growing up, networks and the internet became a thing. So first things were like IRC, where I could talk to strangers, learn about technology, and I went to LAN parties, local area network parties with my desktop PC, got there to my friend's place in their living room. We played the whole night and had a lot of fun. We could use direct messengers to keep up after school with each other, chat. And yeah, after getting these really expensive phone bills, and in my teenage years in the early 2000s, we finally got a flat rate. That meant I could download stuff, I could play video games live through the internet with my friends without having to take my desktop anywhere. And we could set up things like DNS host names, so we could really create our own servers at home, and people from the outside world could just connect to that and see what we have built. So in the mid 2000s, there was more of this decentralizing going on. Like everybody had their own little server, and it started to appear that the internet, while you're very anonymous over there were a lot of direct connections, and you had this peer-to-peer technology going on. So things like Skype popped up, and you could video call with someone at the other end of the planet and talk to them. And it was really, really nice to really talk to other people over there without having like this expensive phone bill. Next up, you see here my sibling, wait, there. the sibling. Um, he's imagined by ChatGPT, obviously, but he used this peer-to-peer technology like quite extensively. And well, that didn't really sound like it was so legal and everything. We went into we saw other things going to rise, which were centralized services and platforms again. So later came Spotify and all that stuff, but it became more in this area like late 2000s. Something changed. The computers became smaller. So instead of a desktop, I had a laptop, and I also got a phone, and things were just not that useful anymore. Basically, if you wanted to have the same thing on all your devices, it didn't really work. You had to go with native applications and hope that these things exist for the different devices that you had. So there was no cross-platform technology available. The only compromise we had was Flash, and that was quickly killed by some dude. So also, we saw these social networks becoming popular, especially Facebook in Germany. There was a lot going on. So this was quite nice to see that everything went from decentralized to centralized again. So when we look at today's situation, we see a lot of software as a services that are subscription based. You rent your software. You're not really pay once, get your tool. You have to hope that in 5 to 10 years, that software is still available to you because you just subscribe to it. A lot of individual websites are gone. And these things, like while more and more people post content on the internet, they do it on Medium, Dev2, social networks, TikTok, Instagram, and so on. There's a lot of new content, but they all look basically the same. And in the early days, we had a lot more creativity over there because everybody had to build their own thing. Like you didn't really have any templates left. So now that browsers and JavaScript caught up, I'm thinking, are we using it properly? Like, are we using the tech properly? Because we could maybe go back to this decentralized web again. And the question here is, the questions here are, is it possible to do that now? And is it useful? So let me introduce you to this technology, which is kind of new, but already implemented in all major browsers and lots going on there. But there's WebRTC. WebRTC basically means when you think of the real or the current implementation of the internet, it's usually you have a server, you have a client A that sends some stuff to the server saves it into the database, and then it goes to some other client. They can read about that. And WebRTC basically means we want to get rid of this server. We want to get a direct connection between these two clients. So while this, in theory, sounds really nice, it starts getting a little bit more complex when you add more and more peers, because you need more and more connections. The web, the connections are getting more and more complex and complicated. And it may not be the best idea to do that for everything, but there are a couple of use cases that we could actually tackle with this. And I want to show you some. One of them, or there are a few, like all the conference calls that you're doing, the audio video streaming that we do over here, games, live broadcasting, most of them are using WebRTC because it's low latency and it's just better performance. One thing that I want to highlight is the Stompenberg FX program here. You can see here, if you play a guitar and you have an electric guitar, usually connected to these pedals, you can set them to other values over there. and try it out online here. And this is not a simulated thing, it's the actual pedal, because through the internet, you connect through WebRTC to a Raspberry Pi, and that is directly connected to the actual pedal. And you can hear the sound that you play with that pedal going on, which is really neat. So this is only possible because you get rid of the servers in between, so it's a lot faster. Another use case is privacy. So whenever you talk with your lawyer or your doctor, you don't really want that conversation to be somewhere else. You don't want anybody to be able to find that somewhere on some insecure server. And you don't want anybody to snoop into that. So privacy is a really good use case to have these direct connections here as well. And now I want to showcase another small thing where I need a friend on the stage, which is, thank you, Meg, for coming up. So it's about connecting devices. And now think of yourself being on, like I ordered something on the internet, and that thing came over to my place, but it's the wrong thing that I like. It has the wrong color, or it has not the right size. So I have to fill out the returns and complaints form. I do that on my laptop. But the problem is they want me to upload a photo, and I don't have a photo of that on my laptop. I need it from somewhere else. So I open this float form QR code, and I let Meg send me that photo that she has on her device. So you can see that she is connected now with her phone to my computer, and she can send me that now. So you see over here.
I got something for a friend that they're unhappy with and want to return.
Okay, let's see it. So you have seen that this connection now was just through WebRTC. It was a direct connection. It didn't get sent to the server yet. Now I'm sending it. I don't want that to be saved. But yeah, now it's done uploading. You can see all the stuff that I sent to the actual server. And I got this new image here, thanks to Meg. And usually I could zoom in, which doesn't work right now. But anyways, it's Happy Kirk Day. So thank you all for looking at that. And yeah, that's it. If you want to get in touch later, I'll be around in virtual coffee.
And thank you, Jörn, for allowing me to sneak a little Kirk Day Easter egg into your presentation.
Thanks.
I appreciate
For
that.
For all of our friends who do not know, we will post more about this in our Slack today. But today is Kirk Day, which is a very meaningful and special holiday in virtual coffee, where our very own favorite maintainer, I think we can all agree on that, Meg. I feel like you wouldn't be upset with us calling Kirk our favorite maintainer.
No,
He was responded to by Missy Elliott. So there's a lot of history there that has really defined our organization. So thank you, Jörn, for being here today, for showing us this, and for sharing our Kirk Day very special moment.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
And next up, we have Abdurrahman, who has been working on that transition there. Abdurrahman, who I've known for longer than I have known at Virtual Coffee, in his open source expedition, and really appreciated all of the things he shared with open source, being able to be part of his journey and to hear the things that he's interested in. So thank you, Abdurrahman, for being here today to talk to us about how to become a 10x engineer through open source.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. And yeah, so basically in this talk, I will give some short story about my experience as like software engineer, and we will go for that. So I will start by introducing myself. So I'm Abdurrahman Rajab, software engineer living in Turkey. I'm originally from Syria, and I have moved from Syria because of like the revolution happening there and everything that happened. Right now, I'm working as a software engineer and doing some community work in open source and having my own podcast, which is like a podcast where I host people to talk about their experience and everything they are doing. I will share my journey with you about like how I started from like at university, then how I improved during that time. So during university, usually we have like a different lifestyle and we have different mindset, and all of this sometimes it doesn't like it collide with the work that we are doing in real life. And I would I had like some kind of expectation that it was different during the work time and reality. And then I will share with you how open source and community in general helped me to improve my work and improve my expectation on work and how I became like a better developer. So to start with the slides, I will start talking about like the university lifestyle and what we are expecting in university. Usually when we go to university, or let's say any education that you are going through, you will expect to study, you will expect to spend a lot of time alone, and you will expect to have like good grades, and you will expect to be a hard coder person where you are just going through the code and you are not doing much of stuff like with the community or like the people outside of the university, which is like was my case. But like at some university, I know that like this is different, and some classes that wouldn't require a lot of like work with community or let's say work with teams, and doesn't require you even to have like open source or even like version control of the work that you are doing, which is like they are having this kind of style where you will just like have an assignment, do your assignment on your own, give the assignment to your grader or teacher or whoever they are, and then they will give you the notes, and then you will move the class on and you will have a different thing, which is like this kind of stuff is not like usually the normal, and you don't have like this kind of maintaining a long-term situation with your people or the people around you, which is like was the case that I had. And you don't have like when you do a class or when you do a homework when you are like in the first year at university, you don't get back to that homework till like you don't get back to that homework after like 2 or 3 years, which is like not the case during the work life. And when I went to work, at the beginning, I was expecting that my whole experience at university, doing the hard coding stuff, like focusing on my code without thinking much about like the environment that I am being with or the people, would be like the most important thing for a company to work with and to get like good experience at work. But like this wasn't the case, because like when I went to work, one of the things that there was important to do is like maintaining a long term or like maintaining a code base for someone else that they have done, and having that for long term and not being like handing it to other people after you. So you don't like just code and you give it as an assignment, but like you code and keep in mind that someone else will use that. And for that reason, like here you don't just think about yourself, which is like having a good grades in case of university, but like here you think about like how you have like a clean code, how you have like a better code that everyone can read and understand in your work. And for that, I can like get some kind of like a quote from Farid Masad, which is he's the co-founder, the third co-founder of Replit. At one of his talk at Hadith Tech, he mentioned that when you write a code, you are communicating with people. So you are either talking with someone in the past or right now or in the future, even if the code that you are writing was your own code and you didn't have much people. So what he was mentioning or trying to say here is that like when you write a code like a few years ago, then you try to read it right now, you're already communicating with your old self. And when you write a code right now, that you need to think about yourself in the future, like because 2 years later you might need to go and get back to that code. So here, one of the things that I realized, like usually in coding, one of the most important things that you need to care about and think about would be having communication with others and talking with other people, which is like get back to I can go to the second point here, which is like there is a power in numbers, which is like a quote I got from Brian Douglas when he was in my podcast, and he mentioned that when you are being in a community and you are being with other people, it will make it much easier for you to move forward and move like to get better by yourself and the thing that you are doing. The reason here is that you are not alone and you are having help from other people, and at the same time when someone from that community move forward, you know how they did and you can ask them about their experience. You can get like some kind of feedbacks from them. They can help you in the future, which here like I could give like kudos to Virtual Cafe, because like this could be one of the things that they have an effect on it, which is like building a community that accepts people from outside, and everyone who are involved can be moving forward with that. So with that story, I'm telling about like how what I was thinking during in the university and how I have like few quotes from other people and work that they are expecting. Here I will just go and focus on like the value of community and friendships in open source. So like to become a Linux engineer, or like to become someone who will doing stuff that no one else that will do, you can think about it as a way that you are leveraging other people experience and knowledge through that, and you can do that through like communities and building real friendships with people. Like an example of that is having an example of building that is like contributing to open source, talking with people, joining communities and talking with them, which is like giving you an advantage of like all of this. And beside that, you will have people around you from all around the world when you are contributing to open source. So if you get stuck in a thing and you don't know how to move forward, when you go through a community or like when you open an issue through open source, you are having like a conversation with the main maintainer. Or if you are in a community, you are talking with people who have experience or who have a great thing that you didn't have or you couldn't reach before, which is like allowing you to reach to the people that behind the screens, and you can like improve yourself way, way better through leveraging their experience. And one of the most important thing here that you would think about is like, you don't go for open source for your own self, but like you at the same time help others. So if you help others, you will help yourself at the same time by knowing like what you are, by knowing what you are doing, and by knowing what other people have, like what issues that other people are facing, which is like a way that will make you understand the situation that you are having. And this is like the short talk about like how I think I would see open source and everything here. So if you feel like to follow or connect through social media, you can find me as A0M0 Rajab everywhere, and you can connect. Just like to have a short summary about that. Basically, when we graduate from school, we focus on hard coding, great. But like when we go to work, we are going to focus on like long-term communication with people, and during work to have like a great experience on how to communicate with people and how to build a good or genuine friendship with them. You can leverage open source and communities that accept people's, and through that communities you can improve, and you have like support from the whole community. So this is it in short, and thank you for joining today. So yeah.
Thank you, Abdulram.
Thank you so much for sharing about open source and all of your experiences, and definitely follow Abdurrahman. We put that in the chat. He's done some amazing things and shares some great content about getting into open source and sharing your story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thanks for having me today.
All right, and we're going to bring up Eddie next.
Whoa.
Hey,
Eddie.
Hello.
How's it going?
Feeling pretty nervous, but other than that, it's okay.
You are gonna do
Nobody
great.
knows.
Yeah, I'm so excited for this next presentation. It touches on something that I actually introduced you to, and Yearn, who went second, introduced it to me. So without further ado, let's just let you take it away.
Nice. Sounds good. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to my lightning talk called Collaborative CSS Battles. My name is Eddie Banner. I do backend Python development, which includes data engineering as well. I live in the Tampa Bay, Florida area, and I'm looking for a job. So to start this off, I want to give some motivation for this project. About a month ago, I was in my very first front-end Folks Fighting Fridays virtual coffee event. In these events, we do problems from the website cssbattle.dev together. For those who don't know, CSS Battle is kind of like LeetCode, but for CSS instead. Anyway, someone was sharing their screen over Zoom, and we kind of started doing some pair programming together, but we kind of mostly just wound up doing them separately. But I noticed I really wanted to do them together. Like all of us be able to edit the same text field and see the same output, but I couldn't, and I felt pretty held back. So I had this desire for a much more collaborative experience of doing CSS battles together than just screen sharing over Zoom. The flow I thought seemed really cool was I would go, hey, I have an idea, then type some code, and we both see the same output. Then they go, okay, cool. What about this? Then they type some code, and we both see the same output. Seamlessly and instantly, we have this back and forth creative experience where we build up the solution together. Now, the tool I was thinking of at the time, which felt collaborative in this way, is Figma. I've never actually used Figma, but I knew it had some collaboration features. Like you can see each other's mouse pointers, and together you build up this visual product in a collaborative way. So here it is. Here's a demo of collaborative CSS battles. So to set it up, you're both in a Zoom call. And I have my browser open on the right. I click and drag the output area, and you see it reflected on your browser on the left. Then I edit some code to change the output, which is reflected on your browser as well and allows you to see the same output. So the two browsers are synchronized and connected in this way. What I do, you see, and what you do, I see. Now that I've shown you what collaborative CSS battles is, I'll say a little bit about how it works. The first thing is everyone pulls up the same cssbattle.dev problem in their web browser. Then you paste some JS code into the Chrome developer console, which registers your browser as a client. It sets up some event listeners on the text field and the slider area elements. It also sets up a WebSockets connection to a WebSocket server. Then when your client detects a change in one of those elements, it sends the state of that element to the WebSocket server. And then the WebSocket server broadcasts that state to all the web browser clients. And then all those clients apply that state locally. So that has the effect that all the browsers stay in sync with each other. I'll say a little bit about some of the main challenges I faced. So I got to the point where everything was working and running locally. And then I had this moment where I said, okay, cool. All I have to do now is put this WebSocket server behind ngrok, and everyone will be able to use it. Yeah, that wound up being some pretty wishful thinking. I proceeded to struggle with a bunch of HTTPS-related errors. I came up with a workaround, but it required everyone having to install a custom SSL certificate on their machine. That approach worked, but it turned out to be very cumbersome and error prone. So I wound up just deploying the WebSocket server to the cloud and buying a domain name for it, which cost some money, which isn't great, but now it's at least a lot easier to use. So I'll mention some areas for future improvements now. The most glaring current limitation is that when some code change gets applied to your text field, it will reset your cursor position to the very beginning, which is really bad for disrupting the flow of a collaborative creative experience. You both have to kind of take turns editing the code. Then there's also the improvement of making it easier to register your browser as a client with the WebSocket server. Currently, you have to open the Chrome developer console and paste in JS code. We could create a browser extension which gives you a button to click which registers you as a client. I've played around with that a bit. I don't have anything I love so far, so I'm still experimenting with that. So anyway, that's it. In conclusion, collaborative CSS battles allows you to work on the same CSS battle with other people for a more collaborative, creative, and fun experience. Here's a link to the code. And quick, I just wanted to give a shout out to Jörn. He helped with ideation and debugging, and we just tested it for the first time together right before this talk. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And so thanks, everyone.
Well, there's no time getting it in under the wire right before the talk. So that's great. But
yeah, I loved it. I love sharing all the things that we're doing at Virtual Coffee and the ways that we're improving and growing together. So thanks so much, Eddie, for sharing your experience.
yeah, thanks, Eddie.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
And next up, we have James, who is going to be rounding out the first half of our Virtual Coffee Lightning Talks. James, you have spent over 35 years as a programmer. So how many languages do you think that you've worked with by now?
Oh, God. Basic, about 4 different versions of assembler, C, C++, C#, a little bit of Pascal, a little bit of Perl, probably a couple others. Also, Power Builder, forgot about that one.
That's a lot.
So what you're saying is that you are incredibly knowledgeable, and this is a really great way to learn from you.
Hopefully, yeah.
So this is fantastic. We're going to learn from James and all of his experience, and we're all now going to become a keyboard power user. Thanks, James, for sharing with us today.
Okay. Now, I bet you're thinking, I've been using my keyboard for years. I know it real well. Well, we'll see. I was going to say, usually when people ask me, how do I get into coding? What I tell them first, learn to type. That's the first thing. So anyway, let's move on. First thing I should want to tell you, you may have noticed it down in the corner, in the lower left corner, is a little dark gray bar. Anything I type will, be displayed there. So if I do a keystroke, you can actually see what it is in words. That was a space, so it didn't really come up much. Anyway, what we're talking about here is from the IBM's Common User Access document. They wrote that in 1987. That was just as IBM was realizing people weren't just using their PCs for little tiny mom and pop shops and playing games. Actual real large corporations were using it, and they wanted to have some unity among the applications. They had also just started working on OS2, and so they wanted some unity there. So they based it on what Apple did on the Macintosh and what Microsoft was doing in Windows, plus on their own stuff. And it controlled all aspects of the interface, from the keyboard to the mouse to what you saw. So I can show you here. The CUI is reason why in the upper left corner, the menu always says file. And usually the one next to it, as you can see here, is edit. And there's always usually a view menu there also. And that's all from the CUI. And also because it is based on the Macintosh, I believe most of what I'm telling you will work on a Macintosh now, although I've only done it on a Windows machine, so I don't really know that much. Now, also the very important part about the CUA is that they wanted to make sure that everything could be done either entirely on a keyboard or entirely with a mouse, because most people didn't have mice back then. So what I'm going to do, you can't see this, but you have to trust me. I am moving the mouse away out of my reach. So I'm going to do this entire talk just using the keyboard. Okay, so we start with the basics. You know them, you love them, up, down, left, right. And we'll show you. And naturally. Okay, here we've got, left brings you back a character, right, goes forward a character. Home brings you to the start of the line and brings you to the end of the line. Page down brings you basically one screen's worth, and page up brings you up one screen worth. As I said, you've using these for years, you know them, no trouble. Okay, we move on. We bring these with the control key with them. And here's where there's sort of some logic to it. So, a arrow key with control, means something consistent. It always means make it bigger. And usually this does work with the command key on Macs. So while the arrow key will move one character, control arrow moves word by word and goes back word by word. Home brings you to the start. Control home brings you to the control home. There it is. Brings you to the start of the document. N brings you to the end of the line. Control N brings you to the end of the document. I said, this is, like I said, always just make it bigger. Then we have Alt, which I said sometimes says make it special. And I'll get to a few examples of that later. But also mostly it's for accessing the menus. So if we go here, Alt and F brings down the file menu. Alt and E brings down the edit menu. And then you can use the arrows. And also, at least now they actually put little letters next to them. You can actually, go to E and then you just have to type, Alt E and then E to get that access. Now, going back to the original CUA, IBM was in talks with Microsoft, and Microsoft said, we do this. We suggest, the letter that works to trigger it, the one that works with the Alt, so the E, the F, or the E, or the V, we should highlight that. And IBM said, no, we should underline it. And they went with underlining it, and which is what we have to this day, which is why file often looks like EILE. Now, other thing you can do in here, I think not this one. I'm trying to remember which ones. That's here. No, okay, never mind. We'll get to that in a minute. Now, Shift, using Shift with a keystroke says select text as we move. There's an exception to that. We'll get to it in a minute. But for the most part, and there we go. So Shift and an arrow selects one character at a time. Shift and Control arrow selects one word at a time. Shift home. With this. Shift home selects from the cursor to the beginning. Shift end selects from the cursor to the end. Shift Control page down selects from the cursor to the end of the document, and Shift Control home from the cursor to the beginning of the document. Okay, and then accept. Now, sometimes Shift means do it backwards. And one easy one to do in here, if you hit Tab, it indents. Shift Tab, unindent. So it's basically do it backwards. And I'll do another example of that in a minute. Now, Tab is handy for navigating dialog boxes. Tab. So it's the dialog. Tab brings you just field to field. So you can just edit all that without ever touching the mouse. When you're in a drop down, you can do just, oops. When you're in a drop down, you can use the arrow keys to move among the choices, or you can use Alt and an arrow key and it drops it down so you can see all of them and then choose among those. And as I said, Shift moves you forward, and as I said, Tab moves you forward. Shift Tab moves you backwards because Tab means go backwards. Now there is one key, one button there. You see the OK is highlighted slightly. That means when I hit Enter, it's going to choose that one. If I want to choose a different button, I can go onto it and press space, and that'll choose that button. Okay. Now I have the big four for editing, which is actually 5, which are down in the corner. Z, X, C, and V, which are mainly for using with the clipboard. Now I'm pretty sure Control C means copy. And I just go that, select, and then paste it down. Control X is cut, which removes it. And then paste. Now, how do I remember these things you're saying? Control C for copy, that's easy. C, there's a C right there, C means copy. Then you've got X for cut. Now, you can think of it as Xing it out of the document and removing it, or you can just imagine that the X looks kind of like a scissors. Then, of course, the tricky one is Control V for paste. And that is, you have to think of it as either a funnel or a cape decorator where you're squeezing the text out onto the document like that. Next up, we've got the Control Z, which is undo, which just which just undoes the changes you made. I kind of think of that as a car making a K-turn, where you're turning yourself around. That kind of looks like a Z, and that's what the mental image I get. Then of course the other one for making copies is Control A. A stands for all, which is a select all, which want to copy everything over. Now, the one thing else you should know about the clipboard is that it pretty much works anywhere that you have, excuse me, wherever you have something to type, you can copy from one document and paste into another box. On a different document, or in a dialog box. It's always there. You can always paste things in there. And I think, yes, that covers everything. Hope you learned something in this little quick talk. Want to know more about me, you can go to my website at noveltheory.com. Want to learn more about the COA? You can find it on Wikipedia or in IBM's docs. And I thank you, and relax in the intermission.
We thank
James.
you, James. That was amazing.
Yeah, that there's so many comments. People are like, I'm gonna have to watch this again like 5 times, or like this is, someone said, one of my cohort mates at boot camp forced me not to use my mouse during the programming. It was the most valuable thing I learned there. So thanks so much.
Also, one thing I forgot while I was doing that.
Oh,
page down, I said, goes you like a screen full. Control page down will give you a full physical page at a time. As I'm going into the idea of make it bigger. Okay, back to where you're.
So yeah, thanks so much, James. We appreciate this awesome primer.
Glad to be of service.
Yeah. So I'm gonna stop using my mouse completely.
You
That. No
should
more.
definitely go for that.
Man, 5 talks in, and we've had like so much, and all like very different topics too, right?
Yeah, we've learned a lot. I feel like we're very well rounded.
Yeah. That's also something that I love about the virtual coffee community. I learn things here that I wouldn't learn otherwise through the other members. They just want to share because they're like, this is so cool. You need to know about it. So.
Yeah, it's great to have like so many different members with different like areas of interest that they're going for, right? Like, because you learn through all of the different things. And I know like, even if you're front end, you learn from the back end folks because they share something and you have these bonds of trust and relationships and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that. And that's the thing that I think makes it all special and worthwhile. And it's super great to see all of these folks sharing all of their expertise and their knowledge, and to be here at Lightning Talks. And now we're halfway through our Lightning Talks. So
Yeah. Yes.
Seems like a good time to take a 10-minute intermission. What do you think?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. We shall do that. As a reminder, we are going to have all these lightning talks posted later on our YouTube for people to view at a later date. So you will be able to rewatch any talk you want, however many times you want. And we are going to have, I've been posting in the VC events channel about today's speakers. So go in there and just tell them how great they did, ask follow-up questions, all that stuff. Take this time during intermission. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
Yeah, get out of your seat, stretch yourselves, and get a glass of water, hydrate.
everybody. Welcome back. Whew. I feel refreshed from that
Hey,
break.
it's great.
How about you?
My sound totally switched itself, so that's always fun.
Oh, really? That is fun. Isn't it fun when you go live and everything seems to fall apart at once?
Everything. There's got to be a sound effect for that. I feel like I've got
Yeah.
one. I've got some sad
Like a
sound effects, but I won't do it. Dan will be mad at me. He'll be like, how are we going to edit that out?
I make
Just
my
leave
own
it.
sound
It's
effects.
amazing.
We don't need them.
That's right. That's what I need to do, Meg. I'll just make my own sound effects.
So we hope everyone was able to get up and have a nice stretch and shake some blood into your extremities. We are about to start the second half of our talks, but before that, I just wanted to take a quick moment and thank a few behind the scenes people who helped make this event possible today. Andy and Rafi, thank you for acting as mentors to our speakers. When we put out our call for proposals, we give speakers the option to ask for a mentor. So you two volunteered, and thank you so much for that. Thank you, Lex, for helping to moderate our chat today and scare away any trolls or spammers. Shelly, thank you so much for helping to collect info from our speakers and make organizing things together a lot easier for me. Dan, thanks for setting up and testing the live stream. And Dan again, plus Ryan, who will work together to turn this giant recorded live stream into individual YouTube videos.
You're welcome. Hey guys, Becca, I heard what you said, and no sound effects are allowed. We've gone over this.
I'm banned from sound effects unless they come from my own mouth.
You can't stop me, Dan.
Yeah, all right. Those ones are okay. Oh, here she goes. All right, I'm gonna leave before I get in any more trouble.
I can't hear it right now.
Becca, you guys are doing great.
This is our show.
Yeah, take that.
Yes. We don't worry. We keep him on a tight leash. But thank you, everybody who helped with this. You're all fantastic. Again, Virtual Coffee is all volunteer based. So everybody that I just mentioned did this on their own free time. And a lot of free time went into this. So thank you so much.
I also I need a very special shout out for Meg, who is our new maintainer. She's our events maintainer. So we recently restructured the way we were doing things, and Meg has just fallen into the event job and she just crushed it out of the park, right? She's done an amazing job. She's done such a great job of communicating with everyone for the lightning talks in a very short period of time. So all of the stuff that she has done has been incredibly appreciated. And so thank you so much, Meg, for making this possible today.
Of course. I just really like doing these kinds of things. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun to be able to connect with people.
It's fun, but it's a lot of work, and I want everybody to recognize that you spend a lot of your time and effort in organizing this and making sure everybody felt supported. And it takes a special person to be able to do that. And you're a special person.
That's nice to hear that from someone that's not my mom. So thanks, Becca. All right,
I'm frequently called the mom of wherever I
am. So we have our next talk is also from a special person. I think she's special to both of us, a very good friend. Would you agree with that, Becca?
I would 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
IO has been such a great source of strength for me and an amazing person to help me grow and to be a part of all of the things that I've done, whether it's at virtual coffee, at open source, to wherever I am. IU is just doing an amazing job of
Yeah.
making community and open source a really great and safe space for everyone.
Yes. And I've really enjoyed I've known her almost as long as I've known you, and I've enjoyed talking with her about whatever and seeing her journey growing in the tech industry. And just, you know, she's our documentation lead here. And we're going to she pre-recorded her talk, so we're going to play that for you right now.
Hello, everyone. In this talk, we'll explore how open source projects can be unlocked by the power of something often overlooked: documentation. Open source projects without clear documentation feel like breaking into a wall. What if we could build bridges instead? Today, we'll learn how documentation can unlock open source's true potential and empower users, contributors, and the entire community. Before we dive into the topic, let me introduce myself. I'm Ayu. I'm Indonesian and based in the Netherlands. As a bit of my background, I love open source contributions, particularly documentation. I really enjoy helping make documentation as clear and accessible as possible for everyone. I'm the documentation team lead at Virtual Coffee, part of the docs maintainer team at OpenSauce, and a technical blogger. If you want to connect with me, my social handle is adiatiayu everywhere except on GitHub, where it's adiati98. So let's begin. I believe many of you might have heard the term docs in open source. I will use this term as well in this talk. For you who don't know, docs stands for documentation. So what is documentation in open source? Imagine a fantastic new tool that comes with no manual instructions. That would be frustrating. Documentation is like the user manual for open source projects. Think of it as a friendly guide that welcomes newcomers and empowers experienced users. It explains how things work, how to get started, and how to contribute to a project. And good documentations is like bridge connecting the code and the people who will use it. Open source projects mainly need three types of docs: technical, product, and guidelines. Technical documentation dives into the code itself, explaining functions and APIs. So, it is the docs for developers. README and API docs are examples of this type of documentation. Product documentation is for general users. You can think of people who are not developers. It guides them through using the software product and its features. For example, installation guides, tutorials, troubleshooting guides, and FAQs. The last one is guidelines. These are the rules and roadmap for new contributors. Contributing guidelines usually explain how to submit code and bug reports, how to participate in the project, like the contribution process and communication etiquette. And style guides help contributors to maintain coding and documentation consistency and quality. Now, why does documentation matter for a project? Let's start with why it's essential for users. Imagine a new user excited to explore your software. If you have clear manual instructions, they will act as a welcoming bridge, lowering the barrier to entry. The users can quickly find answers to questions, solve problems efficiently and independently, and gain confidence in using the software to its full potential. Overall, it can improve user experience and increase the possibility of your software to get new users. How about contributors? Why it matters for them? Clear docs are a magnet for new contributors because they streamline collaboration. Everyone can understand expectations and can contribute effectively. With detailed instructions, code reviews become faster and PRs merge quickly. And that can make contributors happy. Happy contributors are most likely coming back for more contributions. And the more contributors a project has, the faster it grows and innovates. If you're a maintainer, imagine spending less time answering the same questions and fixing avoidable issues. That sounds great, right? And the good thing is, it's not impossible. Clear documentation empowers users and contributors, reducing support needs for maintainers. But the benefits actually go beyond that. Great documentation attracts new users and contributors who are excited to explore a project with a welcoming guide. And the result? A sustainable project that thrives with a vibrant community. All thanks to the power of well crafted docs. Keys to clear and accessible documentation. Okay, before we jump into it, here on the left side, you can see documentation that you usually find in open source. README, tutorials, API reference, contributing guidelines, maintainer guidelines, user guides, FAQs, and troubleshooting guides. Now, the question is, what should you do to make these docs clear and accessible for all users? First, you need to write them in simple language. You want to avoid using jargon and complex technical terms. Then, break down complex concepts into bite-sized pieces. Write it like you're explaining things to a friend who's not a developer. You should aim for clarity and ease of understanding for everyone. Think also of people with different language and cultural backgrounds. They should be able to understand the docs as well. The next key is structure and organization. You need to structure the information in your docs logically for better understanding and for better flow. Remember to make it easy to navigate, for example, by providing a clear table of contents. Visual aids. In your docs, use screenshots, screen recordings, diagrams, and code examples or snippets whenever possible. These help break down complex topics and make the information more engaging. Next is consistency. Consistency in formatting and style throughout the docs creates a professional and easy to navigate experience. Finally, you must regularly update your docs as your project evolves. All right, I'm doing something different here. I want to invite you to join the community in making documentation in open source projects to be accessible and welcoming. Let's start small by contributing to the existing docs of a project you care about. You can report issues such as typos, missing step in instructions, or anything else you can find. You can also search for a documentation related issue that needs help and create a pull request. Another way is suggesting improvements or write tutorials on their docs or a blog post. If you don't know this, writing tutorials is also a form of documentation contributions. If you have a project, start documenting it. You never know if you'll want to make it open source in the future. But even if you don't, you'll have a well documented project. I believe knowledge is power. So, next, please share your knowledge and help others succeed. You can create content such as blog posts, tutorial videos, or do live streaming. Or simply share valuable resources like this talk if you find it informative to support others in the community. We've seen how clear and accessible documentation can transform open source projects. It empowers users, welcomes contributors, and strengthens the foundation for maintainers. By investing in documentation, We built bridges of understanding, opening doors to a world of collaboration and limitless possibilities. So, let's embrace the power of documentation and create a thriving open source project and a community where everyone can contribute and be part of something great. Thank you for being here and listening to my talk.
I, as someone who is on the same team as Ayu, she's on the docs team at OpenSauce, I can verify that she is absolutely incredible at all of the things that she does. And her attention to detail, her understanding of people and of being inclusive of people, like of a global audience, is just absolutely stellar. And
Yeah.
so I am thankful every time I work with Ayu with all of the amazing things that she has brought to the table.
Yeah. On that note, I know that was something earlier in her career that English is not her first language, that she's a little self-conscious about. And I said, Ayu, that's the same for a lot of people. You have this understanding that you can capture this audience who English is not their first language as well. And she kind of was like, yeah, you're right. And I think she like embraces that more and like has that perspective. Like I'm helping people in that same situation become more confident like I have. And
I know, I appreciate it. I mean, my background is in teaching college English, and I love it when IU reviews my documentation and says, like, hey, this isn't clear for a non-native English speaker. Like, okay, because there are certainly points in the things that I'm writing where I just don't realize that. And it helps me to be more conscious of, like, how can I make this accessible to everyone? And IU is doing a spectacular job of making things accessible for everyone.
Definitely. All right, so next we have Andy. Let's get Andy up here. Hey, how are you doing?
Andy.
Hello. I'm doing good.
So
thank you all for hosting.
Oh yeah, no, thank you for mentoring and speaking, double duty. So Andy, it says in your speaker bio, he'll eat a lot of sushi if you let him. Has anyone ever not let you? Said, oh no, you're eating too much. Get out.
There's a fun story there of a all-you-can-eat sushi place in Florida where I used to live that would kick us out after an hour. So yes, I have been
Whoa.
dragged away.
Okay,
So a story for another time. Yeah.
There. All right. Well, you just told us one story. You're gonna tell us another one with your presentation, right?
I am.
All right. Well, take it away.
All right, cool. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Virtual Coffee, for having me. I'm Andy. I want to tell you a story about observing your code in production with open telemetry. So I want to ask you how you think about your code. What's your mental model for your code look like, especially stuff that doesn't just run on your machine. So when it is simple code, like this little snippet here, if this breaks, you probably know what went wrong. You typed in something wrong, or maybe you had the wrong, name of something. But so when code's simple, it's pretty easy to reason about. But for me, as complexity increases, my brain does this, and I just get the chattering little monkey going on. And it takes a while to work through. Well, where could it be? There's a cache, there's several databases, there's many services. I'm calling out to other providers, like, what's going on? There's a really good article called Why Intuitive Troubleshooting Has Stopped Working for You that kind of digs into this. So you can follow up with that one later. And so I often think, like, well, what if I could just tell my future self, hey, here's what might be going on when that bug happens. And there's a There's a fun movie from the late 80s. Hopefully most of you all recognize this, Back to the Future Part 2, where the villain goes to his past self and gives him a sports almanac that tells him what's going to happen in the future. And I like to think about observability as maybe it can do that for us. Maybe it can't predict exactly what's going to happen, but we know we're going to have bugs. There's going to be outages. Some service is going to go down. The network is going to be slow. And so what if we could give ourselves some tips and tricks, our future selves, that is? Hey, this is what's going on. This is how you can debug it. This is how you can find what's happening. And essentially, that's what observability is. It's this idea of looking into the future, giving yourself the hooks to find what's broken, ways to measure software systems to explain any state that your system can get into. This is really well defined in this book, Observability Engineering, by some excellent folks, Charity Majors, Liz Fong Jones, George Miranda. Highly recommend taking a look at this book. And also I have a couple copies to give away later, so stay tuned for that. All right, so here we are. We're in production. Something goes wrong. Our users are seeing an error page. What do we do, right? There could be a million different things. Well, let's use the tools that we have. We have metrics, we have logs, maybe we have traces already. Let's dig into what those things look like and how we can maybe use them to observe our system. Now, some folks will say that this is observability, these three pillars. I would encourage you to read Charity Major's blog and the Honeycomb blog for thoughts on that. I think generally these are useful, but there's just other ways, maybe better ways to do it. So let's dig in. Metrics, right? A gauge or a timer, a number over time, right? So this is a Porsche Turbo S, I believe. This is the tachometer showing your engine, how fast it's going. Well, 0 as a metric is really good when your car's parked in the garage or you're sitting in your driveway. Not so good if you're on the highway, right? This would be a bad metric if you were trying to drive down the highway. Here's an example from a system at work. This is CPU usage. You can see it's hovering between 80 and 100%. Is that good? Bad? Well, maybe it's good if we're crushing sales and users are doing a bunch of cool stuff. Maybe it's bad if I wrote an infinite loop somewhere and I'm just tying up compute and nothing else can get done. So metrics don't tell us the whole story, right? We have to use them and correlate across many different things often, or we need a whole bunch of dimensions, tags, labels, whatever you want to call it, and to figure out, well, which CPU is this? Is this 1 box or is this 10 boxes? What's going on? Well, let's go check the logs, right? And I think all of us have sort of a love-hate relationship with logs. For one, there's often just a lot of them. They pile up. Sometimes they were written by someone else, and maybe it meant someone to that person, but it doesn't mean anything to us now. They come in different formats, right? It's like, well, this one's got time, after an error code. This other one's got it nicely parsed. And now we've got to spend our time, parsing these logs or using some other tool to parse it. And then somebody's got to clean this stuff up after a while. I love this little image I found from IBM support page where they say, we're removing unhelpful error log messages. But this message itself is also not very helpful, at least not helpful to me. So logs, they can be good, especially when you put some structure to them, right? So if you think of logs as, well, if it's putting out a structured payload of data, that maybe is a little bit easier to parse. And if I start to get structured logs, hey, that starts to feel pretty good. I can put a bunch of information in there that I can then use later on. There's a good blog post on the Honeycomb blog about where logs fit in. And I love this idea of, traces are essentially fancy logs. Traces help take you from maybe a meaningless single line that you have to correlate along with metrics and something else to now, something with more context, something that means something to you or your future self when things break. So let's take a look at traces. If you've used New Relic, Datadog, one of those APM tools or performance monitoring tools, you've probably seen something like this where it helps you break out what's happening when you hit an endpoint or make a request in your application, which portion of that time was spent talking to the database or cache or going across the network. This is really useful to help you find and identify things. One challenge with tracing sometimes is it requires like a proprietary library or some kind of tool. So you can see this example from Datadog, where you have to really instrument your code with the literal Datadog library. Nothing wrong with that, but kind of ties you to one vendor in this case. If you want to dig more into traces and distributed tracing, again, hit the honeycomb log and check that out. Let's dig into one of these traces and see what it looks like. So in this case, you can see this trace is for a use coupon request. So imagine you have an app, you're applying a coupon to it. The first thing you want to do is that little purple box there on the left. You want to do some user authentication, make sure it's a valid user for your system. There's a fraud check in there, and then you're going to apply the coupon. Maybe the apply coupon happens in a microservice. So you've got a function to process the coupon and then record it and store it in a database. Cool. Traces help you break that out and figure out, okay, what part of that is taking time. Another way to think about this, imagine you have an HTTP request. So you're going to first hit like a root endpoint. If you don't have a trace ID, you're going to need one because you want to pass that along to your other functions so that you can record that information and generate that diagram that you saw earlier. So think about it as, okay, I hit the first one. If I don't have a trace ID, I'm going to go ahead and generate one. And then I'm going to pass that information on to my next calls so that they can record that same trace ID and span ID, and then we can correlate that later on. And that's essentially what OpenTelemetry is. It's specs, SDKs, and ways of helping you capture traces, metrics, logs, and other telemetry data to send to the back end of your choice. So think vendor agnostic ways capturing this stuff. You can read all about it on opentelemetry.io. Again, sort of taking observability concepts, putting them behind an API and a spec, and that's OpenTelemetry. All right, so usually you want to do this when you have a bug. Future you encounters an issue. Maybe users are reporting something, or in my case, people are asking me, Andy, why is your code so slow? So I took this little example from the OpenTelemetry site. It's in Golang, although you don't really need to know too much Golang to make this work. You can check out this repo later on. It has reproducible examples. But let's dig in. All right, so imagine we have a simple dice rolling endpoint or application. We're gonna generate a random number essentially between 1 and 6. So here's a little bit of code to do it. You can kind of see, it's darkened, but you can see I've got a log in there. I'm also going to purposely slow this function down. I want to simulate a call to potentially a backend API that maybe takes a little bit, and I'm going to randomize it. I'm going to use the value of the dice roll to do that. There's a fun little API I found called fakeresponder.com that basically just simulates the slowness. So if you ever want to test out your system, make it a little slow to see if you can figure out where it went wrong, give that a shot. All right, let's run this thing. So we're going to run this application. You can see my log, not super helpful. It just says simulating a call to a slow API. I'm hitting this a few times so we can get a couple of those logs. We can see there's a few seconds between each log line. Great. We know it's not fast, but we don't really know why. So we get our Jira issue or our Trello issue, right? All right, find out what's slow. If we didn't already know, we cheated in this case. Maybe we go add more logs, we go add some metrics, we try and correlate things, or let's look at what it's like to add observability through OpenTelemetry. First thing we're going to do, we're going to pull in the OpenTelemetry SDK. They've got one for Golang. That's what this example uses. You can see there's a little bit of setup. I also wanted to call out that we want to shut this down cleanly in the background, so you can think of the OpenTelemetry code as kind of happening in parallel across your system. A cross-cutting concern type thing. We're going to wrap our HTTP handlers in some of the OTel libraries as well, so we can capture information about each request. We're going to do a little more setup with the traces. And in this case, we're just going to write to standard out. So just on our console, we're going to see a whole bunch of good stuff here in a second. And then in our roll dice code, we're going to go ahead and add a tracer. We're also going to add some metrics and a counter, track how many times we've rolled the dice. And you can see we sort of instrument our code. So not dissimilar from that Datadog example, but in this case, it's a little more generic, right? It's just the OpenTelemetry SDK, and then we can send that to whatever vendor we want later on down the road. All right, We're also going to add a child span to this slow API call. That way we can really break out, okay, which part of my functionality is taking a while. So let's run this. We're going to get a whole lot of JSON coming out. And you can see we've got some metrics in here. The reason why I wanted to put this in here, right, is it's just data coming out of our system. You can collect it, you can send it, route it as you need. So kind of I wanted to peel apart the covers, if you will, a little bit. We can see our traces. Remember that example I showed earlier where there's a parent trace and then child traces. You can see that here. We can kind of put that side by side, right? So in this case, we hit the root endpoint. It didn't have a parent ID, so it's going to generate one, and then it's going to pass that on to our child traces or spans as it goes. And notice we even get the value of the dice roll right alongside our event. So super cool. We can now not only break down, which function took a while, but also, hey, this was the value. Maybe calculating certain values are take longer or even harder. All right, well, staring at all this JSON, not super fun. Thankfully, there's great projects like Honeycomb. Jaeger is an open source platform and visualization tool for looking at some of this stuff. That's just their website on the top. You can see the actual what it looks like on the bottom. So let's take a look at what that takes to run it. Here we're going to change our standard output to an OTLP output. So basically just export that data into Jaeger. We're going to run Jaeger in a container side by side with our application. And then with a little environment variable, we're going to tell the open telemetry library, go ahead and send this stuff. So if we load up Jaeger in another window, we can see it's got a fun little logo. And then we can start to dig in. All right, we see our calls, we see our individual traces. And if we poke at these a little further, we can see, oh, okay, there's multiple things happening when I hit that endpoint. And if we dig in a little more, we can see, oh, it takes about 3 seconds for that mock API call to happen, but that's really nicely broken out here. And in Jaeger, you can also visualize things different ways. You can look at it as a table. You can look at it in a flame graph. So you can break this data down and kind of explore it to figure out what's going on in your application. So I would encourage you all, help your future self, give yourself that observability almanac and instrument your code in ways that make it easy for you to debug and figure out what's going on later on. You see the link in chat. Hopefully you also see it here. We'll make sure to share that on the socials and things. We're just going to collect emails and then we'll do a random number generator and send a couple print copies of that book out. Big thanks to the folks at Honeycomb for allowing us to do that. My name's Andy. You can find me online at Virtual Andy on most things. There's a link to the slides. Feel free to check those out. Send me questions. And thank you all so much for letting me tell you about observability. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. That was great.
You're welcome. Click the buttons. There we go.
And
click the buttons, do the things. It was amazing.
Tell me
Cool.
real quick, how do you plan on drawing a winner from that?
Well, as you know, Meg, some of us in Virtual Coffee are trying to learn Rust. One of the things we're learning is how to create a random number generator through a command line tool. So we're going to put everybody's name and email in a list, a spreadsheet, and we'll generate a random number with our Rust code. And yeah, we'll send you emails and follow up if you are a lucky winner. So stay tuned.
Yes, programmatically drawing a winner with Rust. Thanks, Andy, again.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. That was really, really great. And next up, we have one of my teammates. And here's the story. I have known Nick since almost April of 2020, since Virtual Coffee started. He's been one of the members that started with us. And I have like a list of people that I've met that I've wanted to work with, and Nick has always been on that list. And now I work with him at OpenSauce. So not only am I excited to have him as one of our members, one of our volunteers, but also one of my teammates. So Nick, thanks for being here today to talk to us about demystifying TypeScript generics. But also, I met Nick in person last week, which was fantastic.
I'm having Miami withdrawal still. Sorry.
TypeScript generics. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and thanks to everybody who's been organizing this. It's much appreciated.
Nick has a better tan than I do. I don't understand how that happened. I feel like we were on the beach at this.
I was in Honduras before that, so I don't know. I got double tans action happening. I guess I don't know.
Just a jet setter, you know.
You know, I get on a plane, I end up somewhere. Things happen. So. Cool.
All right, send it over to you, Nick.
Okay, cool. I think Dan's okay. Cool. Yeah, got the screen share up there. Okay, perfect. So yeah, hey everybody. We're gonna be went too fast there on the trigger. We're gonna be demystifying TypeScript generics today, and just a little bit about me before we get started. Like Becca said, I'm a senior software engineer over at OpenSauce from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. If you're looking for me online, it's Nikki T online, literally everywhere. And you can also find me on my website, nikkit.co, or I also live stream, and you can check all the channels there on nikkit.live. And I am not a big fan of spiders, although I'm a lot more comfortable with smaller spiders now because I know they're eating bugs. So anyways, yeah, all right, let's get to it. Okay, so what are we going to cover? It's a slide I always put in talks, but there's not much to cover. It's two things. We're going to talk about what are TypeScript generics, and then I'm going to do a demo and some live coding because I want this to be more practical than me just reading a bunch of slides. So let's get to it. So what are TypeScript generics? I'm going to just hopefully going to be able to distill it in just a couple lines. There's a fancy explanation on the next slide, but essentially it's a programming concept to potentially make code reusable. And it's generic in the sense that anything can reuse code based on some kind of criteria. And I think this is a trivial example because you can obviously sort, there's an array.sort function that exists already, but just wanted to show, like, say you had an array of strings or an array of numbers, they're different types. So you would have to create a separate function for each one. And what a generic does is you can have that generic function because both of these, if you look in the screenshot, they both are doing a sort on these items, which is an array. It's only the type that differs. And so you can pass in a typical thing you'll see is T for type. As you get, the more you have types in things, you'll probably have like more legible names. But you can see here in the example, the sort is taking this generic type T, and then if you look at it compared to the other functions above, the only difference is this T is kind of like the placeholder where that original type was. And this is the reuse I was talking about. So you go from two functions or n number of functions that are just different types for the array to just one generic one. Here's the fancy description. I'll leave it here for a second, but while you give that a read, I wanted to give this talk because I come from a C# background, and I've been doing TypeScript since like 2015 or late 2014. I can't remember, like early days. And coming from C#, the person that created C#, Anders Hejlsberg, is the same creator of TypeScript. And a lot of these concepts, including generics, are in TypeScript because of that. And so the transition for myself, I didn't find it that difficult. But I know a lot of people that have never used a type language or have never seen generics. It's something that I see people get tripped up on. And this is why I want to go through some kind of practical things to kind of explain some things I've seen people go through. So let's go demo live coding time and cool transition as I use my keyboard. All right, there we go. We're on another screen here now. So first thing I'd say is if you ever want to mess around with TypeScript, you can obviously use your editor. But if you go to typescriptlang.org, they have a playground, and that's what this is. And the neat thing about this is you can write some code and stuff. And if you do Command S if you're on Mac or Control S if you're on any other operating system, it saves the URL, and the URL actually keeps all the code in this long query string. So just wanted to mention that. So I'll zoom in one more here just in case. So let's look at it in JavaScript. So here we have like this list, it's an array, and then we push a couple things onto it. So I wanted this list to be numbers. So I added 1 and then I added 2. And then all of a sudden somebody comes out of left field and puts in yo. And JavaScript's like, yeah, we cool. Now let's come down to TypeScript. Like this is all a TypeScript file, but now that we were adding some types. So an array is a generic type, meaning you can give it like, you can say like, I want this array to be of type number. You might also see it written like this. So I just want to show you here what's happening now. So I do, I push a couple numbers and then I'm like, oh, I want to put on that yo again. And then all of a sudden TypeScript's like, no, you can't do that. And that's because this is a string. So this is type checking happening, but I'm mentioning it because it's in the context of this being a generic array of type number. And so like, say maybe you're like, I do want both of those. I want numbers or strings. You just say like the generic can accept number or string. So then if I undo this here, yo's okay. I'll just show another quick example. This is a map in JavaScript. So in JavaScript land, you can literally put anything you want. But in TypeScript, you want to really define what it is. Like the map, I want the keys to be strings. So like username. So we got Nikki T Online, Dan Tiot, and Becca HW. And then the value is a number. So it's like user likes on some social platform or something. So now if I come here and I do user likes dot set, and then I just do like, I don't know, 42 or 32, 34, I can't speak. And all of a sudden it's complaining. And this is a great way to keep your code kind of sound in terms of the types. These are examples with types, generic types, but I think it gets more interesting when you get into functions. So let's look at this. So we've got, if you've never used TypeScript, don't worry about it, but it has a concept of interfaces or types. All this means is this is the shape of something. So like think of a JavaScript object that has these properties on it. And so I have this function, pick up packages, and there's a parcel, and then there's a bunch of parcels. And the function is fairly simple. It's just saying if I have more than 4, the delivery truck is full, otherwise add a parcel. And then we have some parcels down here, and that all works. That looks great. We come to another one, and it's called the full parcel in this sense. Now it's got like items in it, so I know more about the parcel. So it's literally the same function again, except we're passing in full parcel info here now. And then the additional information is this, the items. So like think of like a shopping cart of stuff you ordered. And again, it's literally the same code for the function. So how can we clean this up? Okay, so let's start off here. So if we go back to just having a parcel, and then we've got some parcels we've got here, and we're going to say I want to pass in my parcel and the existing parcels that are to be delivered. If we come to this function now, it's just of type T. And so we can literally do the same thing now. We can do parcels dot push, and we can just say parcel. And that's great. And we could do the same thing if we come to this other one, which is like the full parcel, which is like the same thing with items on it as well. And we could literally write that same code there. The thing I want to get across here is what I've seen when I've spoken to people that are new to generics is there's this misunderstanding. So like, okay, I have this pickup package function and I'm calling it here and I'm passing in my some awesome gift here. Now, the some awesome gift has these properties. So I've seen a lot of times where people come in here and they're going to go like, okay, parcel dot from address. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it doesn't exist. And they get confused because the actual parcel that's being passed in has that property, but you can't access it in here. And the reason this is because this function is a generic function, meaning it can take in any kind of type, and it can be an array any kind of type, and you're adding it to an existing array that you pass in. The problem here, though, is because it's generic, it's generic in the sense that it knows only as much as it can know about the generic type. And that generic type in this case is the array. So the only things it can access in the function is like parcels dot sort or sum, like basically array functions or array properties like length. So I could do that check again here. So like if parcels dot length greater than 4, then I could say new error, and then I could say too many parcels. And that's all good. And this is still generic because, again, it's the lowest common denominator of things that it knows about. And in this case, it's only an array. And I kind of wanted to just get that point across because this is something I've seen people trip on a lot. So now let's come to here, and we're going to do the same thing. So let's just take the same code here. Now, this is my parcels with extra info. It's got items. Now, I'm just going to show one thing here, and it's impossible to go into all of this in a lightning talk. But the one thing I want to show you here is I can say T and extends parcel. So what this means is whatever type I'm passing in, it has to extend parcel, meaning that whatever I'm passing in has to have these 3 properties. And this opens the door for a few things, because then all of a sudden I can pass in my full parcel info packages like this, because they have all the information that I need to pass in. Or I could just pass in the other parcels that just have that information minus the items. And the neat thing about that is now is like we've given it a bit more information. It's still generic, but now I can be in here and I can go like parcel dot from address, and I could do something with that. Like you could do a check and say like, I don't know, if this is in, I don't know, Montreal, then, the label has to be written in French or something. I don't know. Anyways, this is kind of like a quick whirlwind tour, but I might not have demystified everything, but I just really wanted to show stuff that I've seen people run into where there's confusion in terms of TypeScript generics, and maybe you'll find this helpful. Maybe you won't, who knows? And I've got a few resources here. So this is the TypeScript generics official documentation. These are the examples I was showing. And then there's some additional TypeScript resources. And aside from that, you can check out the slides here. And that's pretty much it. And here's all the places you can give me a follow if you'd like to. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks, Nick. I've seen a lot of your presentations, and you are fearless to do live demos. That is something that is throughout your presentations, and that's awesome.
Well, all I'll say is, like, for people who are like, how does he do it? It's not because I'm necessarily amazing. It's just because I've done it a ton of times. And this, people were talking about building in public and just putting yourself out there. Be comfortable with getting uncomfortable, and don't worry if you screw up something. Nobody's going to care in like 2 months, honestly.
Yeah.
And if they do, then they should really find something better to do with their time. So
good advice, definitely. Yes.
Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That is the tagline of all tech jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. All right. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, no, thanks again for having me.
And our next speaker that we're gonna have up is Aggie. Hey there. Hello. Aggie, her and I met before Virtual Coffee in Flatiron School. Were you in the self-paced program as well? Or did you?
Yeah, so it's really special to be introduced by you because I've known you since I
it's like
my first line of JavaScript code.
Yeah.
us, we're all self-paced and Flatiron.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yes. It all goes full circle, right? Yeah. I was so excited when you reached out and you're like, hey, how about what's this? I was able to tell you about the virtual coffee, and you're like, yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. And And now you pop in and you're like, oh, hey, whenever I see you, I'm like, it's Aggie. So
I feel the same way about you.
yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah, and we've both grown a lot since then, all three of us. And you're gonna talk about growth in your presentation, right?
I am, and it's going to be a really nice segue from Nick's last piece of advice, which is don't worry about making mistakes. So we're going to roll right from that.
Great. Well, why don't you
Perfect.
get started?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, as Meg said, I'm really excited to be here to talk about growth mindset, kind of based on the work of Carol Dweck. And first, I have a confession. Everyone told me that I was smart when I was growing up. And I believed them. I was an AP student after all, and I had no shortage of people around me backing up this point. I would hear things like, you're so good at everything, and don't worry about that test. You always do great. But with believing you can inherently be something like smart comes the fact that you have to live up to it. So based on that, this is how I generally measured success. I did it fast. I did it right the first time. I did it without too much effort. Do you relate to any of this? That feeling when you don't really try, but you got something right? That feeling when you completed something before someone else? These are quite typical and rational ways to respond to the belief that you can be born smart. So let's explore this a little more. Think back to situations in your life and think about if you relate to any of these statements. So read along on the slide and be honest with yourself. I feel bad about myself when I make a mistake. Only a few people are extremely talented and they're born with it. I feel discouraged when I receive negative feedback about my performance. I avoid criticism. If I try something several times and I'm still not good at it, I decide it isn't for me. If you agree with any of these, you might be in the same boat as me and many others experiencing a fixed mindset. So what's the definition? A fixed mindset is a way of thinking that views intelligence, talent, and other qualities as innate and unchangeable. People thinking with a fixed mindset believe they're either naturally talented or not. Some examples of things that you might hear are, I'll never go to understand calculus. I'll just avoid any field of study that includes it. I'm not a creative person. Asking for help is uncomfortable, or just generally a defensive response to criticism. Now, a disclaimer here. I'm not here to say that any one way of looking at things is right or wrong. And by traditional measures of success, I've done well even when thinking thoughts like these. But importantly, as I entered the world of software development, I started to feel the limitations of my approach. So let's think back to some of those measures of success. Doing it fast, without much effort, correct the first time, they're not at all compatible with coding. So let's look at the alternative mindset. The definition of a growth mindset is the belief that a person's abilities can be improved through effort, learning, and persistence. People thinking with a growth mindset view challenges and setbacks as opportunities to learn and grow. Some things you might hear are, making mistakes is a natural part of learning. I can learn any subject if I put in effort and practice. Even a little progress makes a difference. Some things to keep in mind here. You can and do have both mindsets. A pure growth mindset does not exist. The key is identifying when you're thinking with a fixed versus growth mindset in the moment. Growth mindset is not the same as being open-minded, flexible, or positive. And it's not just about praising effort. Productive effort is key here. Following a process and not getting results means we should pivot, not just keep trying the same things. And don't forget about neuroplasticity. The brain can change throughout our life, making new neural connections. Just because you default to a certain mindset now, all of this can be developed over time. Now let's talk about the benefits. The high level point is that a growth mindset is proven to be an effective path to get you closer to your full potential. Now, I expect this group to want the data, so I brought receipts. Let's look at some studies that back up this point. So first, we have a 2011 study that measured brain activity of kids when confronting an error. The growth mindset group showed a flurry of brain activity when confronted with the error, and little activity for the fixed mindset group. Anyone here think that being confronted with errors has anything to do with software engineering? Another study finds students with a growth mindset reported significantly lower stress due to life events. I can think about being on call, having to get a feature out on a deadline. Another study finds significantly higher test scores from the growth mindset group of students across socioeconomic backgrounds. And I would relate this to learning a new technology, applying it, and eventually having your code run successfully. So let's jump back to the story. Where we left my story as a developer, I was effective at the things I was working on, but scared to take on anything too new. So I wouldn't get found out as not smart or not talented. I was avoiding making mistakes or working too slowly by playing it safe. So what happened? Well, a trusted colleague in our last conversation as she was moving to a different opportunity left me with some feedback. If you see work that scares you, you should take it on. She saw I was holding back and I knew she was right. I looked at what was stopping me from taking her advice. And that's when I learned more about growth versus fixed mindset. And once I understood those benefits that we talked about, it was easier to learn and grow because I wasn't so scared of looking so perfect all the time. The benefits were clear. Here are some things that I've done. I've asked questions in public, like in team meetings or an org-wide Slack channel, which is more scary than it sounds. Sometimes I get corrected, and that's okay. I put my hand up for more challenging work. Previously, I would have gotten out of any ticket with serious data work in it, and now I'm exploring that area of development and more. I celebrate the learnings our whole team can share from bugs and errors instead of being embarrassed by them. Of course, we want to avoid shipping bugs, but I recognize it as a failing in performance and not of me as a person. Some of the outcomes of this for me have been that I'm expanding the top of my T, the top of the T representing cross-discipline skills and knowledge. I'm quickly becoming a more competent and confident software engineer. I'm comfortable and relaxed at work. I'm constantly improving my performance and acknowledging that my performance at a specific point in time is not a reflection of me as a person. This allows me to have fun with challenges and learning, and I'm a more effective mentor and compassionate colleague. And what are other ways growth mindset can be implemented for us? One is just use yet regularly. Words have a lot of power. If you simply add yet to the end of statements, you'll see it take effect. I don't know how to do that yet. This code doesn't work yet. Ask for feedback continuously. It can be hard to receive criticism. The more you do it, the easier it'll be, and it's rewarding to see the benefits. Start with someone you've built up trust with. Celebrate effort and process, not just success. Instead of celebrating just shipping a feature, ask your team to discuss and celebrate what challenges you overcame. What was interesting to learn? What was the hardest part? How you handled it? Things like that. All of this is based on Mindset, the New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck. So I highly suggest that as the next step if you're interested in learning more. And I also suggest Radical Candor for a deep dive into giving and receiving feedback. And So Good They Can't Ignore You for a deep dive into thoughtfully developing your craft. And thank you for spending a little time with me today.
Thanks, Aggie. That I think this was one of the crowd favorites as far as presentation goes.
I didn't see the chats as I was talking, so I'm excited to see what people had to say.
You actually brought up Radical Candor.
Yeah, this was absolutely amazing.
And the book Radical Candor, we have a book club channel in our Slack at Virtual Coffee, and that was one of our books that book club did. And we have discussions asynchronously and synchronously, but they're posted in our GitHub discussions board in our Virtual Coffee organization. So for anybody who isn't able to do it at the time or joins after the book club is held, they're able to participate asynchronously later.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, anybody who is inspired by this talk and wants to read Radical Candor, you can go ahead and participate in that discussion on GitHub.
That's great. And I've brought up, some of these books at work and started like little book clubs there too. And the really cool thing about that is when you have this common language you can use, it kind of takes the emotion out of things, so it's been really effective to have like some of these tools together with colleagues that we can use together.
That's great. Well, thanks again, Aggie. That
Yeah.
was
Thank you so much.
And this is like a really great segue.
Oh, I think we maybe losing a little, Becca.
This is a really great segue for our next speaker, Dan Ott.
Yes,
Hey.
Dan Man. Hello.
Let me try.
How's it going? Becca, we're losing you a little bit here, so I'm not sure exactly where she was going with that. I was just going to say that Aggie did a great job, and like I feel bad that that wasn't the last talk and I'm the last talk, but you're stuck with me, so here we are. I don't know, Meg, do you have any other stuff you want to go over? I'm just going to take Becca's off so we don't need to see frozen Becca. I also wanted to reiterate what Becca said before. Just a huge thank you to Meg. Meg's been running this whole show for the last few weeks or however long it's been, I don't know, and been doing a fantastic job. So thank you so much for doing this, Meg.
Dan, I couldn't have done this without you.
Well, I doubt that's true, but
So yeah, I know that your talk is going to be a little flavorful.
Oh no.
I wanted to know what your favorite ice cream flavor is.
Oh, favorite ice cream flavor. I think like all-time favorite is like chocolate ice cream with peanut butter, it's like chocolate peanut butter. You gotta be really specific about the order you say those in, because if you say peanut butter chocolate, then it's lots of times like peanut butter flavored ice cream with chocolate, which is like fine, but and then like get out of here with your vanilla with like chocolate and peanut butter, whatever. And then it's, chocolate peanut butter. The other day, the Mitchell's, the local ice cream chain around here, they have like a banana cream ice cream. And so they do this like taster duo where they'll give you like 2 little scoops, together. And so I did that with the chocolate and peanut butter, which was like really, really, really good. So
oh my gosh. I mean, do you want to just give a talk on that real quick? And
well, let me tell you guys, it was amazing.
that sounds.
That's the end of my talk.
That sounds amazing. Oh God. I need a minute.
All right. I think I'm back.
Becca,
can I do the intro now?
Yes, you were about to talk about some sort of segue. And you're like
me?
known as the master of segues. So later on.
I was gonna segue because we did the Radical Candor book club a couple of years ago, and everyone's frozen on my screen, but I'm just gonna keep going with it. And initially, I was not going to join because I felt overwhelmed, and Dan was like, "You need to be part of this book club. You're gonna really like this book," and I did really like this book. And when Virtual Coffee started, I attribute Dan as being a major part of the origin story of Virtual Coffee, because without him firing me, I would have never started Virtual Coffee.
I didn't
which I say in like half jest, right? It was okay. It was COVID, so technically he didn't fire me, and I did promise him on one of his birthdays that I wouldn't say that anymore. So sorry, apologies.
Yeah, here we are.
But Dan has been there throughout a lot of the evolution of Virtual Coffee, and he's been a big part of making sure that we sustain our members and find new ways to help them grow and to flourish. And so I'm very thankful to have Dan in my corner. And once I graduated boot camp, to be able to have that opportunity to work with Dan and then to continue to work with him on Virtual Coffee things. So I can think of absolutely no better way than to close out this session of lightning talks than with Dan sharing with us today. So thanks, Dan, for being here and being backstage, making sure that everybody gets up here, doing all of the tech for our lightning talks today. And now you're here to close us out.
Oh man, well, thank you, Becca, and it's been, you know, it's been awesome. My talk is, here we go, get Becca out of here. Oh, she's back. See, this is what happens when you give Becca too much control. Is she's just popping everywhere. We've been having our presenters start their screen share. Oh, she's back again. Ahead of time.
I was gone. I
her.
removed myself, and then you put me back in just to.
Yeah, see, likely story. Anyway, I need to start my screen share. I was not able to start my screen share ahead of time because it would have taken over other people. So there we go. Okay, yeah, I am Dan, and I do web development. I was an independent developer for a very long time. I started working full-time for a company called Sprockets. They're I don't know what you call it, an agency and based here in Cleveland, where I live. And yeah, that's I'm like end with like a pretty lighthearted talk about GitHub flavored Markdown. And so what GitHub flavored Markdown is anytime that you are typing in a text field in GitHub, you are most likely using GitHub flavored Markdown. Okay, and so Markdown is the language that was created by John Gruber. He wrote Daring Fireball, and I don't know. I haven't actually been on here for a long time, but this is Daring Fireball, and you know, he's a blogger, a longtime blogger, and he invented this language called Markdown. And what this does is like lets you type structured formatted text that it gets rendered to HTML. And so GitHub flavored Markdown is basically like the Markdown spec plus, you know, some extra stuff that GitHub does, which is kind of neat. So anywhere that you are typing text, which I said, so that's issues, comments, pull requests, Markdown files, and wikis, project descriptions. Anytime that you see, so here we go with, let's go with the new issue. Anytime you see like this text field and then you see a preview tab, that means you're writing Markdown, and you can use almost all of this stuff. There's a couple of things I mentioned, wikis. There's a couple of things that wikis don't support, but I don't think a lot of people use them anyway, so don't worry about that. And one of the nicest things is that anything that you're typing in here, you can, you know, you can preview and see what it looks like, you know, right there, which is pretty cool. So there are a couple docs, and I'll share this repo with y'all at the end. But GitHub has a good you know, docs for writing. They have some like basic stuff. They have some advanced stuff. Like most of GitHub's docs, they're really good and complete. So you can kind of keep rolling with that. There's also, if you want to deep dive, they've published their actual spec. So I wouldn't go here if you want to like learn about Markdown, but if you're curious about how they're, you know, how they're interpreting your Markdown code or anything like that, the spec is what they're using to build all the rest of the stuff. And so if you spend a lot of time writing in GitHub, if you write code, the first thing that you actually want to do is go to your settings in GitHub, go to settings, and then appearance, right? And you scroll down here, and well, you can change your tab size if that's something you care about. And then Markdown editor font preference. All right, this is the big one. So you want to use fix with font when editing Markdown, and this will help you kind of deal with formatting, things like that. And anytime, especially if you type or paste code in a lot of times, you know, your text editors are use a fix with monospace font, and this makes all of those text areas monospace as well. So that's just settings, appearance, and then scroll down. And after that, then you should be good to go. So I made this little repo. It has some examples. It has a couple links to those docs. I actually probably can paste it in here really quick to the chat, maybe comments somewhere. There we go. All right, I posted it in the chat. So where did my window go? There it is. Okay, so the first thing we're going to kind of look at is text formatting, right? So there's the general stuff, and you'll see a lot of these in if you're looking at a new issue. You know, you have your little helper things here. So a lot of these are here. Not all of them are. I would recommend, you know, getting used to these, but you can also just type things a lot of the same way. Right, to text formatting. So this is just like some general formatting. You're probably familiar with most of this stuff. There's, I didn't put it in here, but there's headings and things like that. If you space things, if you have an empty line between two things, then it'll make a paragraph tag. And then after that, you're good to go. I put here's italic. So that's italic right there. There's bold, block quotes. I think probably people see a lot of times. And I just want to throw in here, Markdown, this is good. So GitHub flavored Markdown supports HTML. And so you can, if something doesn't have a Markdown, format, but it is like a normal and basic HTML element, you can use it lots of times. So I put this like super, it's a super tag in here. And there's a bunch of other things like that. If you don't feel like writing underscore and underscore, you can write, EM HTML tags. Same with pretty much all of these examples I'm going to go through. Lists, lots of times you're making lists. And so unordered lists, you can do nested. You can nest as deep as you want. The way you do nests is basically just indent it by 2 spaces. So this is how you do a list. And then if you want to indent the list, you indent it by that same amount. If you wanted to indent it more, then you would make a new line and, kind of go deeper. Actually, I could probably show you what I mean there. So we'll be pasting here. We can get our thing. But if we want to have another indent, third indent, then that'll work for us right there. And along those lines with lists, if you want to have another block element in the same level as this, then you need to indent all of that block level content the same amount as your item, right? So where am I? Text formatting. So here we go. So if we wanted a code example that was relevant to a specific list item, right, then you need to indent the entire thing, right, the same level as the level that you're, going with. But then you can get this. And so if you did this like, flat, it would basically create, I'm just going to do this, but it would create a list, a code block, and then a brand new list. And that's usually not what you want, right? If you're trying to display something that's relevant to that specific list item. Ordered lists work too. So, you just do number, period, space, and you get an ordered list. And you actually, I had an example of this and I realized that, so I have Prettier as like code formatting thing and it fixed it for me, but the number after the first number doesn't matter at all. So you can go in here and you can say 1 and 1 and Markdown will display it correctly. So the only time the actual number matters is the first number of the list, right? And so if you want to start with deeper down, you can go start with 7 and 7, 8, 9. Definition list is something that never comes up in Markdown cheat sheets or anything like that, but they do support it. This definition list is a HTML element, or well, a collection of HTML elements, and they look nice if you're doing, like, if you're writing content and you actually have like a definition list or maybe a FAQ, something like that. You can do this, and it lots of times looks nice. It doesn't doesn't always work out well, but it works pretty good. GitHub has a nice style for it. And here you do just have to write straight up HTML. There's no Markdown, there's no Markdown like equivalent. Task lists. So this is something that you'll see, excuse me, you'll see in the GitHub like little button bar thing is task lists. As you saw here, they render in a Markdown file, but they are like kind of inert, right? So you could display a task list for some reason. You usually wouldn't do this in a Markdown file, but you would do it in an issue, right? And so one way that you can do that, or one way that helps with issues is like if you have an issue that's complex and it takes extra tasks, right? You can do this, create a task list, and then these checkboxes save. So you can see here it says 2 of 10 tasks completed, and that shows up in the list too. And this shows up in a couple other places as well. It's really easy to do. You just do it in Markdown, and then you kind of have that in a lot of places. I think in the milestone view, I didn't set this up, so I'm not totally sure, but I think in the milestone view, if you have a milestone that has an issue with task lists, the milestone will say, well, there's like, 12 tasks left or something like that. So it can be kind of cool. You can't like assign individual tasks to people or anything like that, but it's there if you need it. Collapse sections. This is something that's very cool.
Milestone view, it's a percentage, Dan.
It's a percentage. Thank you. See, Meg, dropping in just like she said she would. The collapse sections. This is something that we use in CSS off, or not CSS off, CSS battles, front end Friday, whatever it is, that Eddie was talking about. So when we are collaborating and we're posting code ahead of time, we like to avoid spoilers, right? So we want to say, here's my solution, and hide the solution itself. And so you get this sort of set up here, and then when you click it, all the content shows up, right? And so that, again, you need to use HTML for that. But I think I might have messed up my markdown code situation there. Well, what we can do is go right to it, because the example worked. Where are we going? Collapse sections, right? So the details element, this is the HTML element. The summary is what shows up before you hit it, and then everything other than the summary element is what gets hidden or shown, depending on if you did it right. So where's my? Oh, it's because I had. Yeah, I bet we can fix that right now. All right. Excuse me. What is it? Markdown. So definition list. Here we go. Collapse sections. So it was this guy, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, cool. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix it live. All right, here we go. Definition list. There it is. There's the whole thing. And like I said, in here, you can use Markdown inside your details. You just need to, if you're going to do that, and this is true for any HTML that you use in Markdown. Lots of times that HTML containers can contain Markdown, but you have to make sure there's an extra full space between your last like HTML and your next Markdown. Links are a pretty cool thing. GitHub does a lot of cool things with links, right? So they will auto link any URL that's just in there in plain text. This is just a normal link, and this is what will show up if you use the link button. You can use relative links in a repo, right? So this is a link to this image file that's here, and you can just type this, and it will stick forever, and it'll also work within the branch that you're in, which is really handy. Issue links. So why isn't that working? Well, theoretically, if you just type number 1, did I close it? No, it's number 1. I don't know why that doesn't work. Maybe it doesn't work in a Markdown file. That's probably what it is. I probably tested it in my new issue. But if you're in an issue or a pull request and you want to refer to a link, you can just say number 1, right? And it will link to that. That's the same for pull requests too. You can link to other repos, right? So you can just do the full link, but you can also do this style of repo link, cross repo link, right? And so this is organization name, repo name, and then, Octothorpe number 13 will link to that issue as well. And both of those get converted to this text automatically, which is really nice. And then linking to lines of code is another handy thing if you're sharing, if you're collaborating, things like that. If you go to let's go to this one. If you go to a piece of code, and if you're looking at a Markdown file, you need to go to, where's my code thing? I think my window is too small to see it. No. All right. I don't know why that's not working. Let's go here. So if you are looking at a piece of code, here we go. If you hover over the line numbers, you can select a line, right? And then if you hit that ... you get a bunch of options. Copy permalink is the one we're looking for here. You can also do this with multiple lines by hitting the first line and then holding shift and then hitting the second line, and then you get a chunk of it. If you copy permalink to that, this will highlight these lines and it will show up like this. And this is true in comments, markdown files, everywhere, which is really handy if you're referring to something in a different comment. A couple other small things that you might not use all the time, but I think are pretty cool. Previewing colors. Oh God, it's not working here. I didn't actually check if it worked in the thing. So let's see if it works in an issue. Yeah, so in issues. So I guess it doesn't work. All right, so there's some things that don't work quite well in markdown files, but they work in comments and pull requests. Is you get a little color preview if you format this correctly with the hex code. It probably works for other color formatting too. I'm not totally sure, but here's the markdown for it anyway. Is you just use the code, little code backtick, and you get a color preview. Footnotes. This is something that I kind of like. I knew at one point and then forgot about, but your markdown files can have footnotes. And if you say like, here's a footnote, and then you click on it, it goes all the way back down to here. Here's my reference. This is like my footnote. This is the bottom of the file, and then you're back. You get back to the top. The footnotes don't need to be at the bottom of the markdown file. They can be in between. Like all of these footnotes are right in the middle of this file, but we get little footnotes, which is kind of neat, especially if you're into academic things. And then alerts, which is a really cool thing that not a lot of people know about. Lots of people use block quotes for calling out information, right? So they're not quoting somebody, they're saying, hey, I want you to pay attention to this. GitHub Markdown has this alerts. And so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different kinds of alerts: note, tip, important, warning, and caution. And this is how you do it, right? So it's very simple. You just have to remember these. These are listed in the GitHub docs that I was talking about before. I don't think you can add other ones, so you have to choose from these ones. But it's kind of cool and useful for writing docs, right? I don't know that I'd use these in an issue description or something like that, but I would use them in docs. I have no idea how much time I've gone, so. I suppose like if I get past 10 minutes, Meg, maybe you just jump in. I'm going to keep talking. Code blocks. Here's another, images. Here's another thing. Lots of people know about images. Your normal image on Markdown this is your alt text, which is always very important, and then your image URL. You can do relative links. So you can link to something in your repo and it'll show up. You can also add a title. So this is like the title attribute in HTML. And that lets you, like, if you hover over a thing, you get, I'm not sure if you can see that on my cursor, but no, you can't. But if you hover over an image with a title attribute, the title will show up in a little tooltip. What is this? Image with title attribute. This is image in repo. These are both in repos. Okay, and this is very cool. So I just learned about this when I was putting this talk together, but GitHub lets you use prefers color scheme media queries. And so you can have a different image that stays in the same place depending on the user's color scheme. So right now I'm in light mode. If I switch to dark mode, I get an actual different image, which can make a big difference when you're using transparent pings and things like that. So this is like dark mode, and I get a totally different image. I get the moon, and then if I switch back to light mode, I get the sun again. And they're both cool. But that can help you, especially on something like your user profile, right? So lots of times people like to make this fancy, and sometimes if you put a fancy image in there and then somebody's on dark mode or light mode, vice versa, it doesn't look that great. So that's that. This example is also straight from GitHub, so these are in the GitHub docs that I linked to earlier. Code blocks. Ooh, what's up? Did I hit 10 minutes? I was just gonna keep going. I probably would have hit like.
No, we didn't know we were supposed to be tracking your time.
I didn't either. Yeah, sorry. I meant to set a timer. I have a timer set, and then it just says 000 because I forgot to push it.
Crushing it.
I thought this was
you're giving us valuable information. So if you have some more valuable information, feel free to share.
Wait, do you want me to keep going, or do you want me to stop?
How much more do you have to go?
Well, I just got to my second page, so. Well, the other ones are not that.
How many pages do you have?
I don't know. You can see them. They're right there. the text formatting.
So you have your diagrams?
Yeah, do diagrams. What's in your diagrams?
Diagrams this is a language called
useful.
Mermaid.
I want to know
It's
that.
very, very
Yeah,
cool,
mermaid.
and you get rendered diagrams. So this isn't like a flat image. This is a rendered diagram, right? And you just type these things in, and the diagram changes. Mermaid also supports GeoJSON. You know, so you can. I mean, we probably could do this on VCs, like make a like big shape or something like that. And all you're doing, you're not pasting in a script tag or an embed code or anything like that. You're doing code block and then GeoJSON, and then you know you have to follow the Mermaid docs for all the details. I don't
Can
really.
you zoom a little on that?
Zoom on the code.
Yeah, plus.
Okay. Yeah. And this is the output, right? Rendered example, and it's a live thing. Like it's not,
Wow.
you know, it's not like a static image again. And don't like you can do that just by pasting in some text in here. And there's 3D models too. So the Mermaid docs, they can do a bunch of different kinds of models. But like, look at this. This is cool, and this is like a real thing that you can mess with. And that was all from pasting in whatever this nonsense code means. I stole these examples from the GitHub, like README. It's not, you know, I didn't write these, but if you know how to do these things, then you can just paste them in instead of like pasting screenshots and, you know, trying to talk about static, you know, assets. You can paste them right in. Same with these math things. If you're into math, you get the same things. So these are like live, you know, live math equations. I don't really remember anything that I learned in math that looks like this, but
Oh no, we definitely have some members who would be like, "Whoa, yeah."
Matt loves math. Does it calculate the expressions?
I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure. I saw that they could do this, so I pasted it in here, and I didn't try to learn about latex or anything.
Can you show us tables?
Of course, I can show you tables. So tables, there's two different ways to do tables in Markdown. One is this really annoying and fussy way where you have to put all these bars in everywhere, and you put these lines, and like you can make most kind of tables. But the other way you can do it is just write an HTML table, and it works fine. It works great.
You can do that in GitHub Markdown.
What's that?
You can do that in GitHub Markdown. That's super actually useful for
It looks
something
like
I'm working on right now.
Yeah, it looks like this. And like if it's a small table that doesn't have a bunch of columns, this is probably fine, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I've written HTML for so long that, you know,
you forget.
Whatever. But like you have to like to get it to line up like this, you have to like put a bunch of spaces.
So
you don't need the spaces,
so
right? So you could
you don't need the spaces.
You don't need the spaces, but if you want it to line up while you're authoring, then like you did. So this will work fine too, right? You know, let's see here. This will be the same, right? And all you need is 3 lines for these headers, right? So this delimitates table header and then table body, right? And this works exactly the same. All the rest of it is just like because it's confusing to look at this, especially if there's more than 2 things.
Yeah.
You know?
There is actually, for those 3 dashes, if you put a colon on the left or right, that's how you tell it to justify.
Yes. So their headers are justified center by default, and you can like do that if you want. You can also do that in HTML. Although in HTML you have to use
what is the best way to do for contributors though? So like if you have a number of people who are adding to your table, what is the best way to do that?
I think I would try to avoid that situation.
I have that situation, so I need to know the answer.
Either if you can, if it's like a thing where a bunch of people are adding to it, I mean, I guess either, I don't know. Or it depends on the audience, you know. Do your contributors know a basic HTML? Then yes, if you have to teach them HTML, you might as well teach them this, you know, I don't know. But yeah, that's tables. Blocks was the last one, so I'm just getting it really quick. This is cool. The only thing I wanted to call out, you know, naming your code language gives you code highlighting, which is really nice. The diff thing is the other thing that I really wanted to show is this is just like one of the languages, but if you do plus minus, see, I messed this up, but this is what the Markdown looks like. Oh no, here it is. So the plus minus gives you like a div view if you're making a suggestion, things like that. You can say, hey, why don't we do this instead of that? All right, I'm done. Maybe. I can't remember there. I feel like
You
there's
have
something else I
a
want to
end page to show us.
Does anybody in the comments have any idea how long I was talking? I really thought this was going to be very fast.
A while.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it was.
This is why we put Dan as the last speaker every time.
That's true. It was
valuable
a good call.
information. But
We do
also
have
today is Kirk Day.
something else to share.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, shout out. We
Yes.
just want to shout out Kirk. This is the origins of Kirk Day. So give it up. You go to kirkday.club, a domain humbly acquired by Roger, one of our members who likes to collect domains. There we go.
There's merch on our store. I created a short link for that and then immediately forgot what the short link was. So
it's in the chat somewhere.
In the chat. It's there somewhere. I think there's a separate tweet from Misty Elliott, right? Was that the only one? I feel like there was a second.
Yeah, it's this one. I think it's this one. I don't know. I mean, this was in 2021. I can't remember a couple days ago.
Yeah, truth. Anyway, Kirk is amazing. He's one of our maintainers here. He is the community health maintainer. Unfortunately, is traveling during this time period for our lightning talks, but Kirk is amazing. Kirk has helped with pretty much everything since our very first Hacktoberfest initiative, and Kirk is the one that often reins us in and says, hey, can you all focus and actually do something that's meaningful instead of just saying things that are off topic.
Yeah.
So thanks, Kirk, for being amazing and also for bringing Misty Elliott to the virtual coffee community.
Yeah. And for putting up with me conspiring with your fiance to hide the shirt in different places around your habitat that you both live in. Thank you.
That was amazing. So Meg, tell the story of what happened at last year's Kirk Day. Was probably the best Kirk Day we've ever celebrated. So tell that story.
I can't remember. I told you I can't remember 2 days ago. What happened
Dan,
last year?
there were balloons and t-shirts, right?
Yeah, we made some merch for Kirk Day last year, and we had the t-shirts, we had some balloons. The balloons were my favorite thing that I ever made, I think. It's just a picture of Kirk on a balloon, which sounds silly, but it's incredible. And, so yeah, we had, I think it was really Meg was working to hide Kirk merch in Kirk's house in various places.
Yeah, yeah.
Surprise. It was good times.
I have received pictures and videos from his lovely partner G of his reactions, and they have been everything I ever wished for. And when I reached out to her earlier this week and asked for a picture of him for Kirk Day, she once again delivered, and we were able to use that in Jorn's presentation. So also thank you, G. You're great. You're great. You two are great for each other. I hope you have fun on your travels. But,
and this has been a really great way to celebrate Kirk Day with our lightning talks and to celebrate our speakers here today. We just want to say a very special thank you to our speakers. The discussion is still going in Slack, so you can check out the VC events channel or hop into co-working to discuss some of the talks you just watched. Maybe you were walking as you watched them. That's cool too. And as a reminder, Next month is our Community Kindness Challenge, and it's really a fun one because we remember all of the things that makes virtual coffee special and how we can support each other.
Yeah. Yes. Definitely a good time to spread some kindness. As always, if you have any questions or comments, reach out to us. We're here to support you. Our Twitter is at virtualcoffee.io. Our email is hello@virtualcoffee.io. Just ping us in Slack. Check out the website. And keep swimming, Nick. Just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming. Also, like another shout out to Meg for being amazing and for
stop it.
This.
You both already shouted
it
out.
But I like it. I like to shout you out. You're just doing a great job. So that's it. And we'll see you all in the co-working room right now.
Yes. My other title that I proclaimed on myself is Queen of Co-working. I will be there for the unofficial chill sesh afterwards, and I hope those of you who can join us. I hope our Lightning Talk speakers are able to join us and give a little more insight to some of their talks. And I also hope all of you watching had a great time, and those of you who couldn't watch live, enjoy the replay later.
Bye.
All right, thanks, all.
Bye.